Devious Creeper rides again. My name is Coriander Cathlemet McDermottier, and this is my story. I live in a small supercity called Ville-Maudite in the Maritimes. With a population of just over 10 million, it is one of the smallest cities in New Brunswick. While it wasn't always a dream to live in Ville-Maudite, it wasn't always a nightmare. That is, until recently. It was fall in my humble, shitty city. A wet, sticky fall like any other. But something was different. The beautiful seagulls that flew overhead and ate your yummy ice cream were absent, replaced by jet black albatross that tried to attack children, and often got away with it. The cloudy blue of the ocean had changed to a milky indigo with black puddles of tar that beckoned you to dive in. That was hardly the strangest thing going on, but at the time I didn't realize how strange things could get. That is, until I did realize how strange things could get. I was only 25 when my parents divorced, leaving me an orphan as they both went their separate ways. My father, by no fault of my own, died in a mid-air collision, and my 64-year-old mother joined Joint Task Force 2 to conduct clandestine operations in the upper atmosphere. So I was left the man of our humble 8-bedroom villa. The house always unnerved me, but as it lay empty, the word creepy took on new meaning to me. The creak of the floorboards echoed through the halls as they sat undisturbed. Dancing candlelight created demonic visage on the aging walls, and it was kind of quiet. I was so terrified that I barely left my room. I left the front door unlocked so food delivery drivers could bring me my nugget meals right up to the bedroom door. Unfortunately, I also had an ensuite toilet, fortunately actually, I also had an ensuite toilet along with a shower I rarely used. One of my so-called friends was worried about my well-being and sent me message after message, which I repeatedly ignored. If this friend was so worried, they would have prevented my parents' divorce. One fateful day, I heard my phone ring. It was 2 p.m. in the morning, so I let the phone ring. Longer, even. After a few moments, the phone ceased its incessant ring, and I rolled over to catch some more Z's, Slippy style. Finally, I thought as I cuddled up, snug as a bug in a rug. To my horror, the phone began to ring again. I grabbed one of my empty beer bottles and threw it at my phone. The bottle exploded harmlessly against my stained, dirty, yucky wall. I rolled out of bed and onto the floor. I thought to give this caller a piece of my immense mind. I stood up, my knees wobbling ever so, and picked up the phone. "What do you want, you damnable fool?" I smiled smugly, feeling rather pleased. My smug joy faded as the person on the other end began to breathe rather heavily onto the receiver. They sounded rather fat, but it was hard to tell because it was just a phone. "Are you alone?" asked the voice. It was a woman's voice, but it sounded off. The words vibrated in her voice, and it sounded as though she hadn't spoken in weeks. I tugged at my tidy whities and answered her question. "No," I lied. "I have a mom and a dad taking care of me, and they're both unemployed, so they never leave the house." "Don't lie to the creeper." Her voice was filled with hate. When she uttered the word creeper, her voice sounded wet with saliva, but with that, the call was over. After that horrific sentence was spoken, the line went dead. Whoever this evil-ass bitch was, they needed to die. Today. I knew that if I was going to hunt down whoever was on the opposite end of the phone call, I would need some tools. For the first time in months, I left my room. Each step through my humble abode felt like walking a mile through waist-deep sludge. My feet dragged, my legs were iron, every inch was a mile. I wanted nothing more than to return to bed and roll up in the blankie, like some kind of purple bug. I couldn't just let this creeper get away with bothering me at home. She needed to be severely and badly punished. I made my way to the stairs only to realize that not only did I not want to walk to the store, I also did not have a car. I never saw a point in getting my driver's license until that moment. I slapped myself in the head, yelling all the while, "Stupid! Stupid! Stupid!" I shouted. "Wait! Eureka!" I exclaimed while pointing my stinky pointer finger to the sky, imagining a light bulb was above my head. I ran back to my room to get my cell phone that I forgot. I had 16 missed calls and 40 missed texts. It was honestly pathetic for her, but they were all from one friend, my good pal Sap. She had moved to town a year ago. I didn't remember because I didn't care. I don't know when she moved. It was around a year. But she cared about me, which was something I could use to my advantage. I called her, and the phone rang once before she picked up. "Coriander, I've been so worried about you. When you stopped coming to the club for squash Sundays, I was beside myself with fright and fear. I'm more than happy you called. Do you want to hang out? I really, really, really think we should see each other today. Unless you don't want to. How are you, by the way? Did your mom come back from army?" Annoying as ever, I thought to myself, accidentally saying it out loud. "What was that? You're really quiet, and I want to hear what you're saying," she responded. I coughed loudly, pretending to clear my throat. "This reception is annoying. Come pick me up. I need a hand." She hung up the phone immediately. I was confused as to why she hung up, thinking maybe I was too harsh with her. I could always call a cab, but I don't feel like spending the meager few hundred bands I had in my bank. After 2 minutes, Sab was in front of my house in her classic all-black '95 Ford Explorer. I hardly thought of it at the time, but something was awry. First, I never told her my address, even though we've been friends for a year or so. I never let her come over. Second, I wouldn't be caught dead in the '95 Explorer. Regardless, I entered the car's back seat without buckling up. Take me to Home Depot or Rona. I don't care which. I just need hammers and knives. I looked out the window, hoping to avoid her gaze. The ever obnoxious Sab turned in her seat to look at me. Her hair was terribly dry, jet black and crusty. Her eyes were the same. She was horribly gaunt and pale, paler than I remember, but still as ugly as I expected. It is so great to see you, Corey. I was really worried about you. She looked to be holding in a laugh or a big, dirty burp. Don't call me that, I barked. Oh, so sorry. She chuckled, but I failed to see what was funny. I spent the rest of the ride in silence despite her best efforts. She was only going 30 kilometers an hour the entire way to the department store. I returned all her feeble attempts at conversation with a hair flip and a sigh. Something about her agitated me to no end. It wasn't just her strange appearance or annoying attitude. Her aura seemed to suck the life out of her room. She adjusted her rearview mirror so she was looking directly at me. When I heard your dad passed, I tried to call you, but your phone must have been disconnected or something. I'm sorry about him, by the way. He was so handsome. I bet he still is handsome. Sometimes death can bring out the best in people, you know. Yep, Pop love flying. My eyes caught the big orange Home Depot sign. Okay, thanks for the ride, buddy. I opened the door even though the car was still moving. Wait, you'll need a ride back, won't you? Ack, I thought. Yeah, I guess I will. Mind waiting? No, but I think I'll just come in with you. She slammed on the brakes, causing my head to slam against the open door as I fell out of the vehicle. The world seemed to spin until I saw her dark visage appear above me. Sorry, Corey. I took her extended hand, nearly pulling her to the ground as I stood up. Haha, sorry, Corey. I looked at her mean style with an angry face that I usually only showed my enemies. The rocket had announced itself with a horrible shriek. The explosion had shredded the young private from total waste. First aid was impossible. He was only found after the convoy had obliterated their ambushers with prejudice and precision. The boy was taking long, shallow breaths, lying against the burned-out remains of what used to be a personnel carrier. He could have been much older than 18. Not that the captain knew, but if he had to guess, this is what he would have assumed. New rotations in the company were short-lived. Learning their name and age only made the next part more difficult. The captain raised his sidearm to the private's temple. The boy tried to lift his arm. He tried to utter some protest. He tried to show that he wasn't a corpse that had yet to take its last breath. The captain's pistol barked as it shredded what remained of the boy's head. The captain shouted for his radio operator. Inform command. Down a squadron, APC, and heavy weapons crew. He clambered into a turret at the rear of the convoy and spoke into the comms receiver at his breast. Get a move on. I'd hate to find out if there's anything worse than irregulars in the swamp. The convoy resumed its journey with a zeal that betrayed the exhaustion of its cohort. The captain spoke his order with a lightheartedness, but he knew that those under his command believed the stories they heard of this place. He also knew that too many of the soldiers under his command had gone missing while nodding off on night watch. Even the guerrillas weren't that quiet. The jaunt through Home Depot was as uneventful as it was obnoxious. Sap was incessantly chatty, constantly inviting me over to her compound and asking personal questions. The cashier shot me a dirty look as I placed a steel chain, 2 pipes, 2 small saw blades, and a 24-inch machete on the conveyor belt. What she didn't realize was that I needed this for my protection. I threw a liter of soda in with my supplies as well for an itty-bitty pick-me-up I would sorely need after assembling my surprise tool. I sat in the back of Sab's Explorer as she idly drove around the city. This creeper might know where I live, and I couldn't risk bringing him to my serene sanctum. I set about building my saw blade nunchaku, drilling bolts through the steel pipes to fasten the saw blades in place. Also, I had a drill, then connecting the pipes to the chain in a similar manner. The ordeal took around 2 hours, and I cut the back of Sab's vehicle pretty severely. I was sure she wouldn't mind when she saw my ripper nunchaku. The car stopped abruptly. I wasn't wearing any seatbelt, so I once again fell forward, my ripper nunchaku inadvertently slicing my arm. I said, "Ouch!" loud as hell. Sab turned around, smiling unnaturally wide before trying to hide her devious grin. "Sorry, buddy, just had to stop at the apartment real quick." She unbuckled and scrambled out of the car. Real quick," she muttered as she scampered to apartment's front door. "Fuck's sakes," I exclaimed, for no one but myself. If I had known she would be this difficult, I would have walked the 5 minutes to Home Depot myself. Now I was clear across the city with no way to get back home other than taxi, bus, metro, Uber, or rideshare. I clambered to the front seat, eager to poke around in her personal belongings. Before rummaging through her crap, I put my hands on the wheel, pretending I was driving. I began to imitate the sounds of the car as I turned the wheel back and forth. Beep, beep, get out the way! I hit the horn to emphasize my play, startling some freak nearby who dropped its coffee. After playing with the wheel, I started to rummage through Sab's glove box. Her ID fell out, which I picked up. Sabri. I started reading out her full name before I got bored and threw it out the window. Her name was a lot longer, than I realized, but it was quite boring. Something more interesting caught my eye inside the glove box. Behind a mess of receipts, tampons, and a gum was a Glock 19 Gen 5 9mm compact pistol with a 24-round mag. I wrenched the pistol out of the glove box excitedly. Never had I seen such a grand toy before. I flipped the safety off and started to aim it all around the car. As I imagined fighting bad guys, I accidentally let a round off through Sab's window. I stuck up my lips, looking like Rick and Morty when something crazy happens. I holstered the gun in my front waistband for safety before climbing into the back seat. I would simply blame the shattered window on some neighborhood toughs. Hours passed, and Sab still had not returned to her car. Despite my lack of license, I would have driven away had she left the keys behind, but I hadn't been so lucky. Eager to return home, I decided to follow her. I waited around for a while, then tailgated someone entering an apartment. When I entered the apartment lobby, a horrid odor struck me. Something was rotting. It smelled like a mix of old meat and an overflowing landfill. I realized that I had no clue which apartment she was staying in, so I followed the smell, hoping it would lead me to her in some holistic sort of way. Tracking the odor led me to the stairwell. The stairwell led me to the 4th floor, and the 4th floor led to Unit 407. The closer I got to the unit, the worse the smell became. It took everything in me not to vomit. The 4th floor itself was bizarre. The place was terribly humid. The walls were slick with a black oil, and a foreboding darkness topped it all off. Adorning the ground was a burgundy shag carpet which looked ancient in the Big 25 compared to the building exterior. I knocked hard on the door leading to Unit 407, then tried to open the door. The door was locked tight. My patience was running thin. Between the smell and my wasted time, I wanted to be out of this apartment soon. After a few moments of silence, I hammered on the door again. To my surprise, I heard the lock click. I tried the door again, and it opened. The suite was pitch black, seeming to absorb what little light there was in the hallway. I slinked through the open door, then lost my balance, tumbling head over heel. I yelped and braced for impact, but the hard pain of a fall never came. In fact, I seemed to be falling in a black void. There was nothing to grab onto and no way to slow my descent. I fell for what felt like minutes, but must have only been seconds before I abruptly stopped in midair. I was outstretched, face hovering just above a hard cement floor before I fell flat. My nose made a horrid crack when it contacted the cement. If I wasn't angry before, I certainly was now. Luckily, I had also brought my tools of destruction. I stood up and pulled my 24-inch machete out of my pant leg. If anyone wants to fess up for this, I have a 24-inch machete that would love to cut you up. I looked around, realizing I was in what looked to be a dank cellar without doors or windows. The horrific smell surrounded me. Despite my brave appearance and loud shout, I was very, very scared. Sab stepped out of the shadows. I told you not to fuck with the creeper, bitch. If she was ugly before, she wasn't winning any contest now. At first, her skin looked to have some kind of gradient. It wasn't until I focused my vision that I realized part of her skin was sewn together where flesh had rotted away. Her jaw looked set to fall off with a mouthful of jagged, rotten teeth. Her hair was full of matted string that was clearly falling out, revealing a scalp full of clawed psoriasis. She took heavy steps towards me as she looked me up and down with her empty, vacuous eyes. Don't make me use this, I said, putting the 24-inch machete away and pulling the Glock out, fully intent on using it anyway, despite my warning. The horrid freak took another disgusting step as she trailed flesh, which was falling off the sole of her foot. I closed my eyes and slammed my big finger against trigger. A round zipped from the chamber and flew wild, hopefully ending up in her forehead. I fired again and no dice. I opened my eyes and looked down the barrel of the pistol. What the fuck? I said aloud. The gun was empty. I fiddled with the gun for a bit, then popped up with the magazine. Empty. Perhaps more mysterious than the civil cellar or the corpse walker in front of me was that she carried a pistol loaded with only 2 rounds. I looked at Sab. She was uninjured. Well, uninjured by me, she was still pretty bad looking. The bullet had flown wide into the nearby wall. I threw the gun at her, which also failed to hit its target through no fault of my own. I pulled out my Ripper nunchaku, ready for a hand-to-hand melee. She was now closing in on me, evidently undeterred by the show of ballistic force. I swung the Rippers around in the air, then under my left shoulder, then tossed them between my hands and finally tossed them into the air and caught them behind my back. Once again, she was unafraid. I lunged towards her with full killing intent. I swung the nunchaku into her neck, hoping to dislodge her noggin from the rest of her. Too easy! I shouted as my weapon met its mark. Black blood sprayed me in the face with a fair portion going right into my mouth and into my tummy. The blood was sick, clotted, and stunk to high hell. However, something was wrong. She gave no reaction to the saw blade embedded in her neck. Sab picked me up by my neck, bleeding all the while, and held me high above her. Her arm seemed to bend as though my weight was too much, but she gave no indication this was the case. Her breath, hot and rancid, caused bile to rise in my stomach, then out of my mouth like baby spittle. Sab twitched and shook throughout her body. Always fun. Fun when they fight. Her free arm rose up to my mouth. A wicked grin greeted me only a foot away. There is no way she's going to do that, I thought to myself. Then she did exactly what I thought and hoped then was hoping that she wouldn't do that, I thought. Sab shoved her fingers into my mouth, part of her skin and meat coming apart as her fingers scraped against my teeth. Trying to free myself, I kicked, scratched, and tried to wrestle away, but to no avail. Her grip was steel, and my neck was putty. I bit down hard on her hand, but that hardly slowed her even as black blood poured down her arm. I started to dig around in my pants as she fully inserted her hand in my mouth. Her taste was no more palatable than her smell, but I was more worried about whatever it was she was reaching for. Her face had a look of dark intent. This wasn't just torture, it was some dark ritual. My fingers found what they were looking for, and I tried to utter a warning to Sab, but all that came out was a wet, gagging cough. I unleashed the 24-inch machete from my crisp Levi's, cutting off Sab's arm in a swift motion. I fell to the ground expecting the hard concrete, but was met with something completely different. Gone was the bizarre otherworld of Sab's unsanctimonious cellar. I now sat on the floor of her apartment. I sprawled out against the cement, trying hard to catch my breath. After a minute or two of lying down, I stood up, 24-inch machete in hand, and looked around. Ville Maudite was not how I remembered it. An unnaturally dark overcast sat languidly in the sky, and the streets were empty. The vague smell of ocean water mixed with grease was replaced by the sterile smell of an office space or hospital. Finally, and most strangely to me, the immediate geography was awry. Streets went on unnaturally, ending in ominous fog, and new dead ends appeared as the streets ended in front of a building unceremoniously. It was as if someone tried to draw the city from memory, but ended their task in confusion. Going back into Sab's apartment was the last thing I wanted to do, so I turned around looking for her car. It was nowhere to be seen. I pulled out my iPhone 19, which cost me $3,000. It was full of cracks. I threw it any time I got pissed off looking at Instagram, which was often. Part of the reason I got so mad at my phone was because of something that young folks call rage bait. Rage bait is when you act stupid on purpose to make people mad. It worked on me disturbingly well. Regardless of my stance on Instagram Reels, my true goal was to call for a cab to take me back to my nice, warm villa. Before I could dial a number, I noticed my signal was dead. Actually, so was my data. I shrugged my shoulders like a Jim from The Office would do, and made my way down the empty streets. I tried to navigate back home from memory, but the geography of the supercity was completely out of order. As I walked in the general direction of my home, I knew the environment wasn't right, and I tried to backtrack, retrace my steps, and take a new route. I walked directly into a dead end that I knew wasn't there before. It's like the city was moving whenever a road or pathway was out of sight. The only thing I could do was wander aimlessly through this labyrinth and hope to find some kind of landmark to orient myself. Sometimes the road stretched for what felt like miles, other times I was led in a pointless circle. Overall, I was making progress towards something, but there were enough setbacks in the journey that I was dadgum confused. After hours exploring the abandoned city, the day was coming to a close. The clouds above the city heights darkened, the air turned frigid, and the fog became even thicker. I was wandering through a frozen haze. The cold was hellish. I could see frost crawling across the asphalt as I struggled to keep warm. Whatever I had done to deserve this strange fate was beyond me. I always ate my vegetables, and I always prayed. As far as I was concerned, those two things mean you shouldn't be sent to scary, bad, mean, evil places. Once night fell completely, I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me. I was wandering blindly through a city alien to me. When I felt like I couldn't continue any longer, I kept going. I had no idea where I was going, but whatever it was, I preferred it to the alternative. In case it's unclear, by the way, the alternative is I go to bed and then die. An odd sound echoed from the cityscape behind me. It sounded like a harsh, mucus shriek from miles away. Its echo sent a chill up my spine that was distinct from the usual chill I was feeling from the cold air that made me chill because I was cold. I found new energy in my fear and picked up the pace. The sound was distant, but I'd hate to find its maker. I went from a sad, pathetic walk like Charlie Brown to a regular guy walking pace. A few moments later, I heard a shrill crash just a bit closer than the scream. I started to speed walk like my life depended on it, and it just may have. I had to focus not to trip and fall. The ground seemed to be growing a thin layer of black ice the longer this horrible night went on. After a couple minutes, I slowed down, not hearing any additional noises. I turned around to see if anything was behind me out of abundance of caution. I strained to see through the dark. I stood in the intersection of the street and an alleyway as I peered through the fog. My eyes caught something, but I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at. If I was right, a cold pair of eyes peered back at me. Before I could get a read on it, the figure darted away. My heart dropped into my ass, and I sprinted full tilt into the nearby alley. You'd be asking why I went into an alley. Well, I prefer close quarters combat. Plus, I've never met an enemy that followed me into an alley. This was the only time I was ever wrong about that. As my feet carried me as far as they could take me, I could hear a rapid thump, 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 trailing me. With each step, it seemed to grow faster and closer. A sound like a hungry predator panting in excitement accompanied the chase. Then I saw it, the end of the alley. I ran towards the dead end. It was as though a wall just sprouted up in the middle of the alley. I tried to climb the wall, looking for handholds, but to my dismay, there was no yellow paint. I slammed my fist against the damnable wall. I turned around to face my foe like a man ought to. Nothing approached. I scrambled, looking around frantically for my attacker, but there was absolutely nothing in the alley. I chuckled to myself, feeling a bit foolish for my fear. Must have been the wind. I chuckled to myself again. Bah ha ha ha. I spoke the onomatopoeia aloud. I scratched my chin, ever so curiously, as I thought about the situation. Those sounds were mighty odd, and I did see a strange creature. It's probably nothing, I said aloud, shrugging my shoulders like I was in an anime. Just as my confidence returned, a horrific creature burst out of a nearby garbage can. Shit! I screamed. The beast was on all fours and would have dwarfed a Great Dane. It had a wild matted mane and massive claws, each digit at least a foot long. Black phlegm dripped from its massive jaws as it stared at me with its sharp black eyes. I'm not scared of you, bitch! I shrieked. I'm not scared of you, bitch! I shrieked. I was scared, but I thought if this dog thing spoke English, I might just convince it to go away. It lowered its stance and approached me, rapping its claws against the ground for effect. Each step it took dug into the icy concrete below with a display of freaking scary strength, dude. I unsheathed the 24-inch machete from my Levi's and held it with both hands. Let's dance! I lunged at the beast as I aimed to slam the blade into its big head with one fell swing. My confidence soared as I took to the monster, screaming a powerful yell, likely terrifying the soon-to-be-dead bucking bastard. With no effort at all, it took the blade in its mouth and swung me from side to side until I let go of the handle as I went flying into the nearby wall. The blow hurt really, really bad, and I made a pathetic sound as I hit the wall and then the ground. It bit down hard on the machete, shattering it into itty little bitty baby pieces. This was not what I expected. I had no more tools, no more weapons, no more comebacks, and no more plans. Except one. Monsters. Monsters like you have no idea what humans are capable of. I rose to my knees and clasped my hands together. I could see the beast tilt its head in confusion before I closed my eyes and began to pray. If disaster comes upon us, the sword, the judgment, or pestilence, or famine, we will stand before this house and before you. The prayers were powerful, they were beautiful, and they would be enough. O God, will you not execute judgment on them? For I am powerless against this great horde that is coming against me. In the middle of my prayer, this horrific, godless beast lunged at me, ripping my left arm clean off. I continued to pray. I do not know what to do, but my eyes are on you. I could hear the beast ripping my lost arm apart with rancid glee. After only moments, it became bored and sought to finish its kill. I made one last plea. Everything in the heavens and on earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. We adore you as the one who is over all things. My eyes were clasped shut and my arm was bleeding heavily. I felt no fear, for the Lord was in my heart. Trumpets blared, and a heavenly chorus sang divine litanies as the sky parted way to make way for the most beautiful of sights. I opened my eyes as I felt the warmth of the Lord. The monster looked up in the sky, snarled, and ran off. An angel was descending from heaven to deliver me to safety. It was an immense, shining figure with wings that sprouted from all over its golden armored body. The angel came close to me and extended its great gauntlet. I could not see its face, for it was covered by what looked like a porcelain mask. I took the great being's hand as it carried me towards the heavens. I closed my eyes again, holding the great angel in a big warm hug. Never in my life had I felt this kind of peace before. I opened my eyes and looked up at the being who had saved me. It was looking up towards the sky as it carried me high above the city. What should I call you, O Lord? It responded with a deep, booming voice that echoed through my mind. There is but one Lord. I am one of his infinite emissaries sent to deliver the faithful. It looked down at me, but something was off. The mask it wore was cracked. On closer inspection, the cracks of its mask were filling up with black blood. The longer I looked, the greater the cracks became until its mask shattered completely. My heart dropped into my ass again, and I decided God might not even be really that real. The angel wore a horribly familiar face. I told you, don't fuck with the creeper, bitch. It impaled me with a great gauntlet, creating a massive hole in my chest that probably wouldn't get patched up. I tried to utter a badass line, but I could only spittle blood. I hoped that it would be like when an anime character gets stabbed, but it was more like a baby vomiting up sweet, yummy baby potato food. My soon-to-be murderer laughed heartily. I tried to push myself off of Sab with my remaining arm, but I found I had no strength left. It was truly and finally the end of the road of me. I'd lived such a gorgeous life. I loved the world and would have hated very much to leave it, but sometimes you just don't really get a choice in the matter. I closed my eyes for a final time, hoping to gain a semblance of peace in my final moments. Sab gave me a hot backhand with a quick whip of her gauntlet. Ugh. sound as the big metal hand hit my poor, soft, sweet face. She frowned at me, then spoke. The Creepers aren't done having fun, bitch! As she finished her statement, she ripped her arm from my chest and then started hitting me with insane combos. Despite not being held anymore, I was still afloat in midair. I was delirious, so I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure that I was being air juggled. Left hand slap, right hand uppercut, grab cancel into left hand uppercut, roundhouse kick, etc. The hellish attack went on and on. Once my eyes were swollen shut, I had lost so much blood that I was a gray raisin. Sab took mercy on me. She held me up by my petite throat, staring into my eyes with her soulless gaze. It's time for a finisher, you nasty little bug. I'm going to slap an atomic pedigree on your white ass. An ecstatic grin spread across her cracked, pale skin. It took everything in me just to beg. No, not the finisher, please. The double hook facebuster was something I couldn't survive. I shook my head no, begging her not to slap me in a pedigree. She looked at me with a horrid, beaming face and nodded sadistically. Sab placed my head in between her armored thighs and hooked both my elbows with her massive arms. I shook again my head in between her legs. A silent plea that would go unanswered. Once I felt the wind strike my face, I knew that Sab had initiated a finisher. We were plummeting through the sky, going faster and faster every second. The wind burned my face. I was a rocket falling towards terra firma, burning up on re-entry. In only moments, I would be returned from where Sab pretended to rescue me. She was one sick, twisted fuck. I slammed to the earth, shattering the concrete below me with a deafening crack. My face was shattered. My jaw must have been broken into hundreds of tiny little pieces as I felt bone shoot through my cheek and out of my mouth. I could utter no more sounds, no more protest. I had no fight left in me. "Ah! Eat it, bitch!" shouted Sab, her legs now covered in the last of my blood. Now it's time for my favorite part. The part where I take you and become you." She stared down at me, devoid of empathy or human emotion. "Your friend Sab, I took her just over a year ago. I took her and became her after beating her ass." She laughed, reminiscing on the taking. "Poor little Sabrienne. Poor little Coriander." With her final words, she turned into a nasty little worm that jumped into my mouth. After what felt like hours of struggle, I stood again. My wounds had sealed themselves shut, but my form would degrade like every other had before. I would need to take again.